Hello and welcome. Today we are diving deep into project planning. We're going to talk about how you can take a huge, maybe even intimidating idea and turn it into a clear, step-by-step roadmap that actually leads to success.
You know that feeling, right? You've got this massive goal in front of you, but the path to get there is just a total fog. We've all been there. Well, that feeling of being completely overwhelmed, a solid project plan is designed to absolutely demolish it.
And this is why it's so important. See, a good plan does more than just tell you what to do. It forces you to look ahead, to spot potential problems while they're still just little challenges you can handle, long before they have a chance to blow up into project-killing disasters.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll kick things off with the blueprint itself. Then we'll talk about building your A-team, breaking down big goals into small tasks, getting the right resources, and then really mastering that timeline. And we'll wrap it all up with a big question. Why bother planning at all?
Okay, first up, the blueprint for success. This is really about understanding why a plan is the absolute essential foundation for anything you want to achieve.
So, what is project planning when you strip it all down? It's really just a systematic process. You take a big goal, you break it into smaller, manageable pieces, you figure out the right order to do them in, and then you figure out who and what you need to get it all done. That's it. Simple, right? But listen, a plan is just a piece of paper without the right people. Projects truly live and die based on the teams that run them. So getting your A-team together from day one is just non-negotiable. Some really groundbreaking research by a guy named Meredith Belbin found that the most effective teams have a good balance of three core types. You need your action-oriented get-it-done people, your people-oriented communicators who keep everyone working together, and your cerebral thinkers who solve the tough problems. A healthy mix of all three is the secret sauce. And here's the really brilliant part of Belbin's work. He found that every single strength comes with what he called an allowable weakness. So your implementer, who's great at turning ideas into action, they might be a little inflexible. And your super creative plant who solves hard problems, they might totally ignore the little details. The goal isn't to find perfect people. It's to build a team where everyone's strengths cover for each other's weaknesses. You also have to remember that teams don't just start out perfect. They have to evolve. Bruce Tuckman's model shows they go through these really predictable stages. They start out in forming, where everyone's polite. Then comes storming, where ideas clash and there's a bit of conflict. But if they push through, they get to norming, where they agree on how to work together. And finally, they hit performing, where they're a well-oiled machine focused on the goal.
All right, we've got our team. Now, how in the world do we tackle the actual work? You know the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. A huge project feels just like that, so we need a tool to break it down.
And that tool is called the Work Breakdown Structure, or WBS for short. It's basically a super disciplined, top-down list of every single thing that needs to get done to finish the project. No stone left unturned. And here's a perfect example of how it works. You take a big, kind of vague goal like improve delivery times. Then you break that down into major phases, like project startup, gather information, analyze data. And then each phase gets broken down into very specific, concrete tasks. Look how gather information becomes interview customers and survey staff. Suddenly, what felt overwhelming is just a clear, manageable checklist.
So, the WBS isn't just some list. It is the absolute backbone of your entire plan. It's how you make sure nothing gets missed, it's the foundation for building your schedule, and it makes it crystal clear who is responsible for doing what.
Okay, so once we have that super detailed task list from our WBS, the next logical step is figuring out our resources. In other words, what people, tools, and money are we going to need to actually get all this stuff done? And those resources usually fall into three main buckets. First, you have people. That's their time and their specific skills. Second, you've got other resources, which could be anything from travel and equipment to outside consultants. And third, you have money, the budget that pays for everything, plus, and this is critical, a contingency fund for when things, inevitably, don't go exactly as planned.
Now for the fun part. Let's build a real schedule. We know the tasks, we know the resources. The next piece of the puzzle is figuring out the order and the timing.
And this brings us to a core concept in scheduling, dependency. It's really simple. Some tasks have to happen in a specific order. I mean, you can't analyze survey data before you've actually done the survey, right? That's a dependency. Understanding these relationships is the key to building a realistic timeline. Which leads us to the million-dollar question every single project manager has to answer.
To figure it out, we can use a technique called critical path analysis. Now, it sounds really complex, but I promise the idea behind it is actually pretty straightforward.
Let's look at this super simple project. We've got our activities, A, B, C, and so on. The next column shows their predecessors. That's just what has to be done first. And then you've got the duration. Now notice activity D. It can't start until both B and C are totally finished. That's a key dependency.
Okay, so let's trace one possible way through this project. If we go from A to B to D and then to F, we just add up the time for each step. So that's 5 days plus 5 days plus 13 days plus 4 days, which gives us a total of 27 days. Got it? Hold on to that number. Now let's check the other path through the network. A, then C, then D, then F. Adding those up, we get 28 days. Now think about it. The whole project isn't finished until everything is finished, which means we have to wait for the longest path to be completed. That 28-day path is our critical path. It literally defines the shortest possible time for the entire project, and any delay to any task on that specific path will delay the whole thing. So, we have our team, our tasks, our resources, our timeline. We have the perfect plan, right? Well, that brings us to our final and maybe the most important point about what a plan really is.
And the source material is really clear about this. No plan ever survives first contact with reality. Things are going to change. Problems will pop up that you never expected. The plan isn't some rigid script you have to follow no matter what. It's a guide, a living document that has to adapt.
And that leads us with this final thought to chew on. If the plan is pretty much guaranteed to change, why do we even bother with all this effort? Well, the real value isn't just in the final document you create. It's in the process of planning itself. It's the act of thinking things through, of anticipating problems, and of creating a shared understanding with your whole team about where you're going, even if you have to take a few detours along the way.